The cool air of the terminal offered little comfort as Lily Chen checked her watch for the third time in 5 minutes. Her flight was scheduled to board in 20 minutes, and she still needed to make one last call before her important meeting in New York. As the founder of a thriving software company that helped small businesses compete with industry giants, Lily had worked her way up from coding in her apartment to leading a team of over 200 people. Today's meeting could open doors to international markets, something she had dreamed about since starting her company 6 years ago. "All systems are good to go," said her operations director through the phone. "The presentation is loaded on your tablet and the team will be standing by for your call after the meeting." "Perfect," Lily replied, adjusting her blazer with her free hand. "I should land around 4 and I'll call as soon as I'm in the cab." She ended the call and gathered her carry-on luggage. Flying first class was one of the few luxuries Lily allowed herself these days. The extra legroom gave her space to work during the flight, and the early boarding meant she could settle in without rushing. More importantly, it meant she would arrive rested and ready for her presentation. The boarding area for Vista Airlines was already crowded when Lily arrived. She joined the priority boarding line, passport and boarding pass ready. When the agent called for first-class passengers, Lily stepped forward with 3 other travelers, 2 older men in expensive suits and a woman who looked to be in her 60s. "Boarding pass, please," the gate agent said without looking up from her computer. Lily handed over her phone with the digital boarding pass displayed. The agent's eyes narrowed slightly as she scanned it. "I'm sorry, but there seems to be an issue with your ticket," the agent said, her tone suddenly cooler. "Could you step to the side while I help the other passengers?" "Is there a problem?" Lily asked, confused. "I checked in this morning and everything was confirmed. Please step aside," the agent repeated louder this time. Several people in line turned to look. "I need to board the other first-class passengers." Lily moved to the side, feeling a prickle of unease. She watched as the agent cheerfully greeted the other passengers, scanning their boarding passes without issue. After they had boarded, the agent called over a supervisor, a man with thinning hair and a permanent-looking frown. "My system shows your seat has been reassigned," the supervisor explained after a brief glance at his tablet. "There was an overbooking situation." "That doesn't make sense," Lily said, pulling out her phone to show her confirmation email. "I have a confirmed first-class seat. I checked in hours ago." The supervisor barely glanced at her phone. "The system shows you were the last to check in for first class." "That's not possible," Lily insisted, keeping her voice steady despite her rising frustration. "I can show you the timestamp on my confirmation." "Ma'am, you're holding up the boarding process," the supervisor said, his voice taking on an edge. "We can offer you a seat in economy, or you can take the next flight in 3 hours." Lily looked past them to see another first-class passenger being welcomed aboard, a man who had arrived at the gate after her. She felt a familiar tightness in her chest, the same feeling she got when she was the only woman in investor meetings and had to work twice as hard to be taken seriously. "I need to be on this flight," she said firmly, "and I paid for first class." "Then you'll need to accept the economy seat," the supervisor said, already turning away. "We'll issue a partial refund after your flight." The gate agent handed her a new boarding pass without meeting her eyes. "You're in 34B, middle seat." Lily took the boarding pass, too stunned to argue further. The middle seat in the back row meant she would be one of the last to deplane. Her carefully planned schedule was already falling apart. As she walked down the jetway, Lily tried to make sense of what had just happened. She'd flown first class dozens of times before. The airline's explanation didn't add up. How could she be the last to check in when she had done so hours before the flight? The economy section was already crowded when she reached her row. A large man occupied the aisle seat, part of his body spilling into her space. In the window seat, a mother was trying to settle a fussy toddler. Lily squeezed into the middle seat, struggling to find room for her knees. "Could you put that in the overhead bin?" the flight attendant asked, pointing to Lily's laptop bag. "It has my computer and work documents," Lily explained. "I'd rather keep it under the seat." The flight attendant's smile didn't reach her eyes. "I'm afraid it's too large. It needs to go overhead." Lily looked around and noticed several other passengers with bags the same size as hers under their seats. She thought about pointing this out but decided against it. She handed over her bag, watching anxiously as the attendant stuffed it into an already crowded overhead compartment. Once the plane reached cruising altitude, Lily tried to make the best of the situation. She took out her tablet to review her presentation, but found it impossible to work with the limited space. The man beside her had fallen asleep, his arm taking up the shared armrest and part of her seat. Every time she moved, the mother on the other side gave her an annoyed glance, as if Lily was deliberately disturbing her child. Halfway through the flight, Lily got up to use the restroom and decided to walk the length of the plane to stretch her legs. As she passed through first class, she saw that 2 seats were empty. Her original seat, 3A, was one of them. When a flight attendant passed by, Lily stopped her. "Excuse me, there are empty seats in first class. My original booking was for 3A, which I can see is empty. Could I move there for the remainder of the flight?" The attendant gave her a quick once-over. "I'm sorry, those seats are reserved." "Reserved for whom?" "They've been empty since takeoff," Lily said, trying to keep the frustration out of her voice. "I'll have to ask you to return to your assigned seat," the attendant said firmly. "Standing in the aisle creates a safety hazard." As Lily made her way back to economy, she noticed something that made her blood boil. A man was being escorted from economy to one of the empty first-class seats, the very one that should have been hers. He was thanking the attendant profusely as she helped him settle in. Back in her cramped middle seat, Lily pulled out her phone and began taking notes. Times, names, seat numbers, anything she could remember about the incident. This wasn't just poor customer service. Something felt deliberately wrong about the whole situation. The rest of the flight was a blur of discomfort. By the time they landed, Lily's back ached, and she'd been unable to do any meaningful work. As predicted, deplaning from the back row took forever. By the time she reached the terminal, she had less than an hour before her meeting. In the taxi to her hotel, Lily filed a formal complaint through the Airline's app, detailing everything that had happened. The response came almost immediately. A clearly automated message thanking her for her feedback and offering a 10% discount on her next flight with Vista Airlines. "No way," Lily muttered, closing the app. She would deal with that later. For now, she needed to focus on her meeting. Despite the travel difficulties, Lily's presentation went well. Her potential partners were impressed with her company's technology and vision, but throughout the meeting, her mind kept returning to what had happened at the airport. That evening in her hotel room, Lily opened her laptop and began searching for information about Vista Airlines. She wasn't normally one to dwell on bad customer service, but something about this incident felt different. It wasn't long before she found what she was looking for. Dozens of social media posts and reviews from passengers, with stories eerily similar to hers. Confirmed. First-class seat mysteriously reassigned. Empty first-class seats, but wouldn't let me sit in my paid seat. Treated like I was lying about my booking. As she scrolled through the complaints, Lily noticed a pattern. Most of the people reporting these issues were women or people of color. Many mentioned watching as their seats were given to other passengers who arrived later. Lily sat back, her suspicions confirmed. This wasn't just about her. There seemed to be a pattern of discrimination happening at Vista Airlines, whether it was official policy or not. Her phone buzzed with a message from her team, congratulating her on the successful meeting. Lily smiled, but her mind was already working on something else. As the founder of a company built on making systems fairer for everyone, she couldn't just let this go. "I need to understand what's happening here," she said to herself, opening a new document to organize her thoughts. "And then I need to do something about it." She wouldn't know it then, but that moment in a quiet hotel room would be the beginning of a journey that would change not just her life, but an entire industry. Vista Airlines had no idea who they had messed with, and neither did Lily yet. But she was about to find out just how far one woman's determination could go. Lily woke up early the next morning, her hotel room still dark. The incident from yesterday's flight lingered in her mind like an unsolved puzzle. After a quick shower and a cup of coffee, she sat cross-legged on the bed with her laptop open in front of her. "Let's see what we're really dealing with," she whispered to herself, typing Vista Airlines discrimination into the search bar. The results were eye-opening. Beyond the social media complaints she'd found last night, there were news articles about customer lawsuits against Vista that had been quietly settled. Several travel blogs mentioned the airline's reputation for selective service, a polite way of saying certain passengers received better treatment than others. One blog post from 6 months ago caught her eye. Vista Airlines, the unwritten rules of who gets bumped first. The writer, a former travel agent, described patterns he had noticed over years of booking flights. According to him, Vista had an unofficial policy of protecting certain customer profiles during overbooking situations, while consistently bumping others, particularly women traveling alone and people of color, regardless of when they had booked or checked in. Lily's phone rang, interrupting her research. It was her assistant, Raj. "How did the meeting go?" he asked after she answered. "Actually, really well. They want to move forward with the partnership," Lily said, closing her laptop. "But something else happened that I can't stop thinking about." She told Raj about her experience with Vista Airlines, her voice growing more animated as she described the empty first-class seats and the man who was later upgraded into one of them. "That's awful," Raj said, "but honestly not surprising. I've heard similar stories about Vista before." "That's the thing," Lily replied, pacing around the hotel room now. "It seems like everyone knows about this, but nothing changes. These complaints just disappear into a black hole." "So what are you going to do? File a complaint like everyone else?" Lily stopped pacing. "No, I'm going to dig deeper. There's something systematic happening here, and I want to understand it." After her call with Raj, Lily made another call to change her return flight to a different airline. Then she spent the rest of the morning in meetings with her new partners. By lunchtime, the contracts were signed, and she had a few hours free before her evening flight home. Instead of sightseeing, Lily headed to a coffee shop with her laptop. She wasn't just angry about what had happened to her anymore, she was curious. How could an airline get away with such practices in this day and age? And why would they risk the lawsuits and bad publicity? Her first step was to join several online forums where flight attendants and airline staff shared stories. Using her business email address and a brief explanation of her interest, she introduced herself and asked about Vista's internal practices. The responses trickled in slowly at first, then faster as word spread that someone was asking questions. Flight attendants shared stories of unwritten rules passed down during training. Gate agents described the coding system used to flag certain passengers for downgrading if flights were overbooked. One message came from a former Vista employee who had worked in their IT department. "The system is designed to look random, but it's not. There's an algorithm that scores passengers based on various factors. Some of these are business-related, like how often they fly or how much they typically spend. But other factors have nothing to do with being a valuable customer. I left the company partly because I was uncomfortable with how the system was being used." Lily wrote back immediately, asking if the former employee would be willing to talk more. While waiting for a response, she dug into Vista Airlines' financial reports. As a public company, their quarterly statements were available online. The numbers told an interesting story. Vista had been struggling financially for the past 3 years. Their costs were rising faster than their revenue, and they were losing market share to both budget airlines and premium carriers. Their customer satisfaction ratings had been declining steadily, yet their executive compensation packages had increased. "They're squeezing every penny," Lily muttered as she scrolled through the reports. "But they're squeezing in the wrong places." Her phone buzzed with an email notification. The former IT employee had agreed to a call but wanted to remain anonymous. 30 minutes later, Lily was listening to Alex describe how Vista's passenger management system worked. The algorithm was originally designed to identify high-value customers for special treatment, Alex explained. But over time, it evolved into a tool for deciding who to inconvenience when things went wrong. "And the criteria?" Lily asked, taking notes. Some made business sense. Frequent flyers, full fare tickets, passengers with tight connections. Protecting these customers has a clear business case. But then other factors were added that had nothing to do with customer value, such as profile pictures from linked social media accounts, names that sounded foreign. Solo women travelers were flagged as flexible in the system, meaning they were supposedly more willing to accept changes. "That's outrageous," Lily said. "How could this possibly be approved?" "It wasn't, not officially," Alex replied. "It evolved over time through small changes that nobody questioned. By the time I realized what was happening, it was baked into the system." After the call ended, Lily sat back and considered what she'd learned. This wasn't just about her bad experience anymore. It was about a flawed system that was hurting people and ultimately damaging the airline itself. That evening, as her plane took off for home, on a competitor airline where she'd had no issues with her first-class seat, Lily opened a new document on her tablet. At the top she typed, Vista Airlines, the problem and potential solutions. For the next 3 hours she worked steadily, compiling everything she had learned. She outlined the discrimination issues, the financial problems, and the corporate culture that allowed these practices to continue. By the time the plane began its descent, she had the beginnings of a plan. The following week was a whirlwind of activity. By day, Lily ran her software company and finalized details of the new partnership. By night, she continued her investigation into Vista Airlines, building a network of contacts that included former employees, industry analysts, and other passengers who had experienced similar treatment. One of her most valuable connections turned out to be a retired airline executive named Helen, who had worked for 3 major carriers before opening a consulting business. What you're describing isn't unique to Vista, Helen told Lily over lunch, but they seem to have taken it further than most. The airline industry has been struggling with these issues for decades. But it's 2025, Lily said. How is this still happening? Helen smiled sadly. The industry changes slowly. Many airlines are still using reservation systems built on technology from the 1980s, with layers of patches and updates. And changing a company culture is even harder than changing its technology. So what would it take? Lily asked. To really fix an airline like Vista? A complete overhaul, Helen said without hesitation. New leadership, new systems, new training, new values. But with their financial situation, they can't afford to make those changes. They're in survival mode. Lily nodded thoughtfully. What about new ownership? Helen laughed. Good luck finding someone willing to take on that challenge. Airlines are notoriously difficult businesses even when they're well run. But as Lily left the restaurant, an idea was taking shape in her mind. Her software company specialized in modernizing outdated systems while making them more fair and efficient. What if those same principles could be applied to an entire airline? That evening, she called Miguel, her company's financial advisor. I have a question that might sound crazy, she began. How much would it cost to buy a controlling stake in a mid-sized airline? There was a pause on the line before Miguel answered. That depends on the airline and their current situation. Are we talking hypothetically, or do you have a specific one in mind? Vista Airlines, Lily said. Their stock has been underperforming for years. I've been looking at their financials and they seem vulnerable. Another pause. Lily, buying an airline isn't like buying a software startup. The regulatory hurdles alone would be enormous, not to mention the capital requirements and operational complexities. I understand that, Lily said. But I'm not asking if it's easy. I'm asking if it's possible. Miguel sighed. Let me run some numbers and get back to you. But Lily, may I ask why you're interested in Vista specifically? Lily told him about her experience and what she had discovered since. As she spoke, she could almost hear Miguel's expression changing from skepticism to interest. So this isn't just about business, he said when she finished. It's about business and justice, Lily replied. The current system is hurting people and it's hurting the company too. That's a problem I know how to solve. I'll get you those numbers tomorrow, Miguel promised. And Lily? This might actually be less crazy than it sounds at first. As she ended the call, Lily looked out her apartment window at the city lights below. 6 years ago, she had started her company with nothing but a good idea and determination to make things better. People had called her crazy then too. Sometimes, she said to herself, the craziest ideas are the ones worth fighting for. Little did she know just how much of a fight she was about to take on. The numbers on Miguel's presentation made Lily's eyes widen. They sat in her office, the city skyline visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind her desk. Rain pattered against the glass, creating a soothing backdrop to their conversation. Vista Airlines stock has dropped 60% in the last 2 years, Miguel explained, pointing to a downward-sloping graph. Their debt is mounting, customer satisfaction is at an all-time low, and they've lost market share to competitors who've modernized their operations. So they're vulnerable, Lily said, leaning forward. Extremely, but that doesn't mean this would be easy. Miguel flipped to the next slide. To gain a controlling interest, you'd need about 30% of their shares. At current prices, that's approximately $200 million. Lily didn't flinch at the number. Her company had been valued at over $1 billion in its last funding round. She had the resources. The question was whether she wanted to use them this way. The bigger challenge, Miguel continued, would be convincing other shareholders to support your vision. The current board won't go down without a fight. Who are the major shareholders now? Miguel pulled up another slide. 3 investment firms hold about 40% combined. The CEO and other executives have about 15%. The rest is spread among smaller investors. Lily nodded, processing the information. So I'd need to win over at least one of the major investment firms to have a chance. Exactly. And they care about one thing: return on investment. Your plan would need to show them how fixing these discrimination issues would improve the bottom line. That's the easiest part, Lily said, standing up to pace around her office. The current practices aren't just wrong, they're bad business. Vista is bleeding customers and facing potential lawsuits. Their reputation is in tatters. Miguel watched her with a mixture of concern and admiration. You're really serious about this, aren't you? I've never been more serious about anything, Lily replied. This isn't just about what happened to me. It's about creating change in an industry that desperately needs it. After Miguel left, Lily called a meeting with her company's leadership team. She needed their support before committing to such a massive undertaking. The reaction around the conference table was mixed. Her chief technology officer, Devi, immediately saw the potential. Our algorithms for fair resource allocation could revolutionize how they handle bookings and customer service, she said excitedly. Others were more cautious. Running an airline is nothing like running a software company, warned Thomas, her operations director. The regulatory requirements alone would be a nightmare. I'm not suggesting we run the airline ourselves, Lily clarified. We would install experienced leadership who share our values. Our role would be to provide the technology and vision to transform their systems. By the end of the meeting, she had their cautious support. The next step was to approach the investment firms that held large stakes in Vista. Over the following weeks, Lily met with representatives from each firm. She presented a detailed plan showing how addressing the discrimination issues would improve Vista's reputation, reduce legal risks, and ultimately increase profitability. She emphasized the positive press that would come from such a transformation, and how it could position Vista as a leader in customer experience. 2 of the firms dismissed her outright, seeing her as a tech entrepreneur out of her depth. But the third, Greenlight Investments, was intrigued. Their representative, a thoughtful man named Philip, asked the kind of questions that showed he understood both the business case and the ethical imperatives. Your analysis of their current problems is spot on, he told Lily after their third meeting. And I have to admit, your vision for how to fix them is compelling. But the current board will resist any attempt to acknowledge these issues, let alone address them. Then we go around the board, Lily said. We make our case directly to shareholders. Philip smiled slightly. That would mean a proxy fight. It would be messy, public, and expensive. Lily met his gaze steadily. I'm prepared for that. The question is, would Greenlight support such a move? He didn't answer immediately, but promised to discuss it with his partners. While waiting for Greenlight's decision, Lily continued building her case. She hired a specialized legal team with experience in corporate takeovers. She commissioned a detailed analysis of Vista's operations, identifying specific areas where changes could yield immediate improvements. And most importantly, she connected with more Vista employees and customers, gathering stories that illustrated the human cost of the airline's practices. 3 days later, Philip called with news. Greenlight is in, he said simply. We believe your plan offers the best path forward for Vista and its shareholders. We're prepared to vote our shares with yours. With Greenlight's shares added to what she planned to purchase, Lily would have nearly enough for a controlling interest. She would need to convince some smaller shareholders, but the path was now clear. The next phase happened quickly. Lily's team began quietly buying Vista shares through various brokers to avoid driving up the price. Greenlight did the same. Within 2 weeks, they had acquired nearly 25% of the company. That was when Vista's board noticed what was happening. The CEO, Richard Powell, called Lily directly. Ms. Chen, he said, his voice carefully controlled. I understand you've been acquiring a significant position in our company. I'd like to understand your intentions. I'd be happy to discuss them, Lily replied calmly, but not over the phone. Let's meet in person, my office or yours. 2 days later, Lily sat across from Powell and 3 other board members in Vista's corporate headquarters. The tension in the room was palpable. Let me be direct, Powell began. We believe you're attempting a hostile takeover of our company. We want to understand why a software entrepreneur would suddenly take interest in an airline. Lily met his gaze. I became interested in Vista when I experienced your customer service firsthand. What I discovered afterward concerned me deeply, both as a customer and now as a significant shareholder. She opened a folder and slid it across the table. Inside was a detailed report of Vista's discriminatory practices, including testimonials from former employees and statistical analyses showing patterns of bias. These practices aren't just ethically problematic, she continued as the board members scanned the documents with growing alarm. They're destroying shareholder value. They've contributed to your declining customer base, your reputation problems, and your vulnerability to lawsuits. Powell's face had turned red. These are unsubstantiated allegations, and even if there were isolated incidents, they don't justify an outsider trying to seize control of our company. I'm not an outsider anymore, Lily replied. I'm a major shareholder concerned about the direction of my investment, and Greenlight Investments shares my concerns. The mention of Greenlight changed the atmosphere in the room. The board members exchanged worried glances. What exactly do you want? Asked one of the other board members, a woman who had been studying Lily carefully throughout the meeting. I want Vista Airlines to acknowledge these issues and commit to addressing them. That starts with new leadership and new systems, Powell scoffed. You expect us to step aside because a customer had a bad experience? No, Lily said, her voice hardening slightly. I expect you to recognize that your company is facing a shareholder vote that you will lose. You can work with us on a smooth transition, or you can fight and lose publicly. The choice is yours. The meeting ended shortly after, with Powell barely containing his anger and the other board members looking shaken. As Lily left the building, her phone buzzed with a text from Philip. How did it go? They'll fight, she typed back. Time for Phase 2. Phase 2 was going public. Lily issued a press release announcing her intention to seek changes in Vista's leadership and policies. She outlined the discrimination issues in broad terms and presented her vision for transforming the airline into an industry leader in fair customer service. The story exploded in the media. Tech entrepreneur takes on airline after discrimination, read one headline. Vista Airlines faces takeover bid from diversity advocate, proclaimed another. Vista's board responded with their own press release, dismissing Lily's claims as the exaggerated complaints of a disgruntled customer and questioning her qualifications to influence airline operations. But the damage was done. More current and former Vista employees came forward with stories that supported Lily's claims. Customers shared their own experiences of discrimination. The airline's stock price, which had briefly jumped on news of acquisition interest, began to slide again as the extent of their problems became public. Behind the scenes, Lily and her team were contacting every Vista shareholder they could identify, making their case for change. Many were receptive, having watched their investment lose value under the current leadership. 3 weeks into the proxy fight, Lily received an unexpected call from the female board member who had been at the meeting. This is Claire Davidson, she said when Lily answered. We met at Vista's headquarters. I remember, Lily replied cautiously. I want to talk, Claire said. Not as a board member, but as someone who cares about this airline and knows you're right. Powell is leading us off a cliff, and I can't stay silent anymore. As Lily hung up, she felt the first real surge of confidence that she would win this fight. She hadn't set out to buy an airline, but sometimes, she reflected, the path to change took unexpected turns. The boardroom fell silent as the final vote tally appeared on the screen. Lily sat perfectly still, her expression calm despite the storm of emotions inside her. After weeks of intense campaigning, countless meetings, and a very public battle, the moment of truth had arrived. With 62% of shares voting in favor, announced the independent auditor, the motion to restructure the board of Vista Airlines has passed. A ripple of reactions spread through the room. Richard Powell's face darkened with anger. Several board members looked resigned. Claire Davidson caught Lily's eye and gave a small, approving nod. Philip from Greenlight Investments leaned over to whisper in Lily's ear, Congratulations. Now the real work begins. He wasn't wrong. Winning the vote was just the first step in a long journey to transform Vista Airlines. As Lily walked out of the boardroom that day, she knew that changing the culture and systems of an entire company would be far harder than winning a shareholder battle. The press was waiting outside the building, cameras flashing as Lily stepped into the afternoon sunlight. She had prepared a brief statement, knowing this moment would set the tone for everything that followed. "Today marks a new beginning for Vista Airlines," she told the gathered reporters. "Our goal is to create an airline where every passenger is treated with respect and dignity, where employees are valued and supported, and where business success comes from providing an exceptional experience for everyone. The changes won't happen overnight, but they start today." A reporter called out, "Is this about revenge for how you were treated as a passenger?" Lily shook her head. "This isn't about revenge. It's about making something right that's been wrong for too long. It's about proving that treating people fairly isn't just the right thing to do, it's good business." The first month of Lily's leadership was devoted to assessment and planning. She assembled a transition team that included airline industry veterans, technology experts from her software company, and consultants specializing in organizational change. They dug deep into Vista's operations, finances, and culture, identifying both problems and potential solutions. The findings were sobering. Beyond the discriminatory booking practices that had first caught Lily's attention, they discovered a toxic workplace culture where employees feared reporting problems, outdated technology systems that made good customer service nearly impossible, and a financial structure that prioritized short-term cost-cutting over long-term stability. "We need to address all of these issues simultaneously," Lily told her team during a late-night strategy session. "Each one affects the others." Claire Davidson, who had kept her board seat and become Lily's ally in the transition, sighed heavily. "The challenge is doing it without bankrupting the airline in the process. We're not exactly flush with cash," Lily nodded. "That's why we start with changes that cost little but mean a lot. We create transparency around our booking and upgrade policies. We establish clear channels for employees to report problems without fear of retaliation. And we communicate honestly with customers about what we're trying to fix." The first public announcement of specific changes came 3 weeks later. Vista would implement a new transparent system for handling overbooking and upgrades, with clear criteria that eliminated the possibility of bias. The airline would also establish an independent review board to examine past complaints of discrimination and recommend appropriate remedies. The reaction was mixed. Many praised the moves as bold steps in the right direction. Others, including some longtime employees, worried that acknowledging past problems would damage the airline's reputation further. And investors nervously watched the stock price, which fluctuated wildly with each new announcement. Behind the scenes, Lily was working closely with Devi, her technology officer, to develop new systems that would replace Vista's outdated booking and customer management platforms. The goal was to create technology that not only eliminated bias but actually improved the customer experience while reducing costs. The old system requires 3 different employees to handle what could be done automatically. Devi explained during a presentation to Vista's operations team, "With our new platform, we can redirect those employees to actually helping customers instead of fighting with outdated software." Some of Vista's veteran employees were skeptical. "We've heard promises about new technology before," said Anthony, a gate supervisor with 20 years at the airline. "It always ends up making our jobs harder, not easier." Lily took his concern seriously. "That's why we're not implementing anything without extensive testing and training. And we want your input every step of the way. You're the experts on what works at the gate and what doesn't." This approach, listening to employees rather than imposing changes from above, slowly began to shift attitudes within the company. When workers saw that their feedback was genuinely valued and incorporated into the new systems, resistance gave way to cautious optimism. Still, not everyone was won over. A group of executives who had been closely aligned with the previous CEO resisted the changes at every turn. They delayed implementing new policies, undermined training efforts, and spread rumors that Lily planned to sell off parts of the airline once the stock price recovered. The situation came to a head 4 months into the transition, when Lily discovered that the head of operations had instructed staff to continue using the old booking algorithms despite the official switch to the new system. She called an emergency, meeting with the executive leadership team. "I've tried to be patient," she told them, her voice steady but firm. "I've listened to concerns, made adjustments where needed, and given everyone time to adapt. But I can't and won't tolerate deliberate sabotage of these changes." The operations head, A man named Victor, who had been with Vista for nearly 30 years, leaned back in his chair. "These aren't changes, Ms. Chen, they're experiments, and I have a responsibility to protect this airline from well-meaning but misguided experiments. You have a responsibility to follow the policies set by this board and this leadership team," Lily countered. "If you can't do that, you need to step aside for someone who can." Victor looked around the room, clearly expecting support from his longtime colleagues. But the mood had shifted. Even those who had initially resisted Lily's changes had seen enough positive results to give her approach a chance. The next day, Victor resigned. 2 other executives followed. Lily moved quickly to promote people from within the company who had embraced the new vision, including Anthony, the formerly skeptical gate supervisor, who became the new director of customer experience. 6 months into the transition, the first real measurements of success began to emerge. Customer complaints had dropped by 30%. Employee turnover, which had been among the highest in the industry, was down significantly. And while the stock price hadn't fully recovered, it had stabilized and begun a steady upward trend. Most importantly, the stories coming from passengers were changing. Social media posts about Vista now frequently mentioned helpful staff, smooth experiences, and problems being quickly resolved when they did occur. The airline was gradually shedding its reputation for discrimination and poor service. One afternoon, Lily was walking through Chicago O'Hare Airport. On her way to a meeting with Vista's hub operations team, she had made a point of regularly visiting different parts of the airline, talking directly with employees and observing operations firsthand. As she passed a Vista gate, she overheard a conversation between a gate agent and a passenger that made her pause. "I'm sorry, but your first-class seat has been affected by an equipment change," the agent was saying to a young woman who looked to be of Middle Eastern descent. Lily tensed, her own experience rushing back to her. But then the agent continued, "We've had to switch to a smaller plane with fewer first-class seats. According to our policy, this means we need to reseat based on check-in time. However, since you checked in early, we've been able to protect your first-class seat. We just needed to move you from 2A to 1C. Is that acceptable?" The passenger smiled with relief. "Yes, that's fine. Thank you for explaining." Lily continued on her way, a small smile playing at her lips. The exchange had been simple, transparent, and fair, exactly what she had been working to create. It was a small moment, but it represented the larger transformation taking place. That evening, in a call with Raj, who was running her software company while she focused on Vista, Lily reflected on the progress. "We're not there yet," she said. "We still have systems to fix, attitudes to change, and trust to rebuild. But for the first time, I really believe we're going to succeed." "Was it worth it?" Raj asked. "All the money, the time, the stress, just because of one bad flight?" Lily thought about the gate agent she'd observed that day, the passenger who had been treated fairly, and the hundreds of similar interactions happening across the airline each day. "It was never just about one flight," she replied. "It was about making things right for everyone who comes after me. And yes, it's absolutely worth it." 2 years had passed since Lily first boarded that fateful Vista Airlines flight. Standing at the window of her office, she watched a Vista plane take off, its new logo gleaming in the morning sun. The airline had been renamed Horizon Air 6 months earlier, marking the final step in its transformation. Her phone buzzed with a message from Claire, now the company's chief operating officer. "Terminal 3 looks amazing." The team outdid themselves, Lily smiled. Today was the grand opening of Horizon's redesigned terminal at their main hub. It featured cutting-edge technology, thoughtful design, and most importantly, a customer service approach that put people first. The terminal was the most visible symbol yet of how much had changed. "I'll be there in an hour," she texted back. "Just finishing the quarterly report for shareholders." The report made for satisfying reading. Passenger numbers were up 28% compared to Vista's final year. Customer satisfaction scores had risen from among the industry's lowest to its highest. Employee retention had improved dramatically, and the stock price had more than doubled from its lowest point during the transition. But the numbers, impressive as they were, didn't tell the full story. The real achievement was the change in culture, both within the company and in how the public perceived it. Lily closed the report and headed to the airport. As she drove, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. There had been moments when she'd questioned whether buying an airline had been a reckless move, driven by personal anger rather than sound business judgment. The first year especially had been filled with crises: resistant executives, skeptical employees, nervous investors, and a public that was slow to believe real change was possible. The turning point had come about 9 months in, when a major snowstorm hit the East Coast, causing chaos throughout the airline industry. While other airlines canceled flights en masse and left passengers stranded, Horizon had implemented its new customer care protocols. They had proactively rebooked passengers, arranged hotel accommodations before people even asked, and kept everyone informed through their new communication system. The contrast was so stark that it made national news. Horizon Airlines shows how to handle a crisis, read one headline. From worst to first, how Horizon weathered the storm, proclaimed another. Suddenly, the airline that had once been notorious for poor treatment of passengers was being held up as an example of customer service done right. Arriving at the airport, Lily parked in her reserved spot and made her way to Terminal 3. The space was busy with travelers, but lacked the stress and confusion typically associated with airports. Digital signs provided clear information about flights and gate changes. Service desks were positioned throughout the terminal, not just clustered in one area, and most noticeably the staff moved through the space with purpose and friendliness, actively looking for people who needed assistance rather than waiting to be approached. Claire met her at the entrance to the new premium lounge. "Perfect timing," she said, giving Lily a quick hug. "The press is already here for the tour." The lounge was designed to be both luxurious and inclusive. Rather than a single large space that could feel intimidating, it was divided into areas for different needs: quiet workspaces, comfortable relaxation zones, family-friendly sections, and prayer rooms that respected various faith traditions. The design sent a clear message. Premium service meant meeting diverse needs, not just offering champagne and expensive snacks. As they walked through the lounge, a familiar face caught Lily's eye. Anthony, the former gate supervisor who was now a senior director, was talking with a group of reporters. "The key change wasn't just in our policies," he was explaining. "It was in our approach. We stopped seeing problems as nuisances and started seeing them as opportunities to show our values in action." Lily smiled at how perfectly he had captured the philosophy she had worked to instill. When she had first promoted him, some had questioned putting a gate agent in such a senior role. But his frontline experience had proven invaluable. He understood exactly what needed to change because he had lived with the broken systems for years. After the press tour, Lily, Claire, and the executive team gathered in a private room for a moment of celebration before the official ribbon-cutting ceremony. They had come a long way from the tense early meetings when half the room had been waiting for Lily to fail. "I want to thank all of you," Lily said, looking around at the faces of people who had become not just colleagues but partners in an improbable journey. 2 years ago, I walked into Vista Airlines as an angry customer with a crazy idea. You could have dismissed me as an outsider who didn't understand your industry. Instead, you took a chance on a different approach, and you've made it work beyond what I could have imagined. You gave us the tools and the permission to do better," replied Devi, who had moved from Lily's software company to become Horizon's chief technology officer. "We always knew what was wrong, but fixing it seemed impossible until you showed up." After the private moment, they moved to the main terminal for the public ceremony. The space was filled with employees, passengers, and media. Lily had insisted that this event celebrate the people who had made the transformation possible, not just the leadership. As she stepped up to the microphone, Lily felt a wave of emotion. This moment represented the culmination of so much work by so many people, and it had all started with that one humiliating experience in an airplane seat. 2 years ago, she began, I was a passenger who was treated unfairly by an airline that had lost sight of its purpose. Today we celebrate not just a beautiful new terminal, but a fundamentally new approach to air travel, one that puts people first. She went on to explain the philosophy behind Horizon's changes: transparency in all policies, technology that empowered both customers and employees, a commitment to treating everyone with equal respect, and a workplace culture that valued speaking up about problems. But the most important thing we've learned, she concluded, is that doing the right thing is also doing the smart thing. Treating people fairly isn't just a moral choice, it's good business. Our success proves that companies don't have to choose between ethics and profits. In fact, in the long run, you can't have one without the other. The ceremony ended with a ribbon cutting, with Lily insisting that Anthony and several other frontline employees join the executives in holding the scissors. It was a small gesture, but it reflected the collaborative spirit that had become Horizon's hallmark. After the formal events, Lily took some time to walk through the terminal alone, observing the operations in action. At gate 12 she paused, realizing this was where she had stood 2 years ago, shocked and angry at being denied her rightful seat. A voice behind her broke into her thoughts. "Excuse me, are you Lily Chen?" She turned to find an elderly woman with a kind face. "Yes, I am." "I thought so," the woman said with a smile. "I just wanted to thank you. My granddaughter works for Horizon. She used to be a flight attendant with Vista. The difference in how she feels about her job is night and day. She's proud to work here now." Lily thanked the woman, touched by the personal impact of changes that were usually measured in statistics and financial reports. As the woman walked away, another passenger approached, this time a young man who looked to be of Indian descent. "I heard what she said, and I wanted to add my thanks too," he said. "I travel weekly for work, and I used to dread flying Vista. As a person of color, I was constantly randomly selected for additional screening, bumped from flights, or just treated with suspicion. Flying Horizon is completely different. I actually look forward to it now." These encounters continued as Lily made her way through the terminal, a mother grateful for the new family-friendly policies, a pilot who spoke of improved safety protocols, a passenger with a disability who appreciated the thoughtful accommodations. Later that evening, Lily sat in her apartment reflecting on the day. She opened her laptop and found herself looking at the document she had created 2 years ago, after that first awful flight. Vista Airlines, the problem and potential solutions. It seemed so long ago now. That night when righteous anger had led to an audacious idea. Her phone rang. It was Miguel, her financial advisor from the beginning of this journey. "Congratulations on the terminal opening," he said. "The stock hit a new high today, by the way. Remember when I told you buying an airline was crazy?" Lily laughed. "To be fair, it was pretty crazy. The best ideas usually are," Miguel replied. "So what's next? You've fixed an airline. What are you going to transform now?" Lily looked out at the night sky where the lights of planes moved steadily across the darkness. "I'm not sure yet," she said thoughtfully. "But I know there are other industries that need the same kind of change. The lesson of Horizon isn't just about airlines. It's about proving that doing the right thing and doing the profitable thing can be one and the same." As she hung up, Lily felt a sense of completion but also of new beginnings. What had started as a personal response to an injustice had grown into something far larger, a model for how businesses could operate with both purpose and profit. It wasn't perfect yet and the work would never truly be finished, but they had proven that change was possible. And in the end, that was what mattered most.